Right, UFC 279 is in the bag, and oh my God, what a performance, what a fight, what a result for Nate Diaz. I mean, it is like the MMA gods were smiling down on him because, let's be honest, Khamzat Chimaev went out there and did what Khamzat Chimaev does. Okay, he looks sensational. But this video isn't about that. It's about Nate Diaz, right? It's the last fight on his contract. He's walking away from the UFC. And now he walks away with a win, with a finish over a legend in Tony Ferguson, a guy that was an interim champion, a guy that is loved by the MMA community. And it was a great fight. It absolutely was. I thought both guys went out there, gave it the roll, and I thought it was tremendous. And the crowd absolutely loved it, and it could not have gone any better for Nate Diaz. I mean, listen, Chimaev should be, you know, I won't say ashamed of himself, but the way he handled himself all week wasn't the best, was it? But the missing weight, that's the main thing that I'm talking about. I couldn't care less, if I'm honest, about the brawls, about the kickoff at the press conference. I'm not bothered about stuff like that. But I do get a little upset when fighters don't make weight and when they're unapologetic for it.
I don't care about that bro. I kill that guy. Gotta go for everybody.
But still, that's another video. That's another topic. Credit goes to Nate Diaz for taking the fight against Tony Ferguson. Even bigger credit goes to Tony Ferguson for doing that. Because let's be honest, Tony had lost 4 in a row. Can you imagine the pressure going into this fight? You know, he was supposed to fight Li Jingliang. Very different fight from Nate Diaz. Maybe a harder fight than Nate Diaz, let's be honest. But still, the fact is you formulate a game plan for a certain guy. Tony Ferguson, listen, he went on a tremendous winning streak. He was the interim champ, and now he's lost 4 in a row. Granted, to only the best of the best, but still, there's a lot of pressure there. Psychologically, that weighs on you. Tony Ferguson prides himself on his fighting ability. He didn't have to take a late notice change up in opponent, but he did. So for that, he deserves all the credit in the world, as does Nate Diaz. Now, let's get into the fight, because I thought the fight was very, very good. It was a typical Nate Diaz fight. You know, he goes out there. It was a bit of a brawl. It wasn't the most crisp, technical fight, but it was exciting. And that's all that matters. If you're a fan of mixed martial arts, that's what you want to see. Diaz was using the boxing to great effect. Tony Ferguson was chipping away with the leg kicks. Tony Ferguson always has that kind of weird, unconventional striking style, you know, and he was throwing a lot of spinning elbows. He was loading up on shots, which meant that when he missed those shots, he had to follow through, and then to counter the follow through, he would spin. That's why he was swinging so much that he would miss, be off balance, but then turn that into a spinning attack. But he used it a bit too frequently. Diaz was starting to make those reads. He landed some beautiful right hooks. It was a 1-2, I think, as well in round 4 that started the beginning of the end. The exact same combination that he landed against Conor McGregor. Listen, and I love the antics from Nate Diaz as well. The psychological warfare. All right, granted, he might have been masking the fact that he was a bit tired. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. The output from both men was through the roof. It was a highly entertaining fight. But when Diaz was walking over to the cage, when he just went for a little walk away, I think he went and had a chat with Dana White. You know, that is what exactly Anderson Silva used to do. That was because he's saying, this is my cage. I'm in control. I'm not worried. I'm not flustered. I'm not panicked by adrenaline. I'm doing whatever the fuck I want. I thought it was a great fight. Nate Diaz is already loved by the entire world in mixed martial arts, but what a way to go out. If we never see him in the UFC again, which I think we will, we're going to get to that in a minute, but if we never see him in the UFC again, what a fantastic way to go out. I mean, the man's had a tremendous career, so many fights in the UFC, a lot of records, a lot of post-fight bonuses, a lot of submissions. He's now ranked, he's had 10 submissions in the UFC, not an easy feat. Of course, Oliveira's #1 with 16. There's a few around at 11, and then there's a fair few at 10. So I think he's like joint 3rd for submissions in the UFC, which is an amazing thing, an amazing accomplishment. Now, Tony Ferguson taps to the guillotine in round 4. Shouldn't have gone for that takedown, but hey, Diaz deserves a lot of credit because he went for the guillotine, but then he had to switch up his grip. He had to alter the grip, pull it up to really get the pressure on it, a modified guillotine, and that's what Diaz does. I mean, he's always had fantastic jiu-jitsu, but to do that against Tony Ferguson, a man that is an accredited 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Eddie Bravo. Tony Ferguson's a submission threat himself. He can go toe-to-toe and handle anyone on the ground, okay? And Nate Diaz went out there, beat him at his own game to a certain degree and choked him out. Tony, I think on the flip side as well, he'll deserve a lot of credit. You know, yes, of course, it's a loss. And yes, Tony Ferguson now has lost 5 in a row. But you have to give the man a lot of respect. He is a warrior. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He fights nothing but the best of the best. Always looking for the hardest fights. And of course, willing to step up, change opponent, take on Nate Diaz at the last minute. We're not going to see Tony Ferguson get cut. The reality is, a lot of the time, if a fighter's lost 5 fights in a row, there may be a discussion about them retiring, or maybe even the UFC cutting their contract. I think given the circumstances, that won't happen to Tony Ferguson. I think given his popularity, the performance that he put on, the fan-pleasing style that he has, but of course mainly stepping up and being a dependable guy for the company, he'll get props. So he's not going to get cut. You know, all right, maybe there's a discussion, is Tony Ferguson's best days behind him? I think the reality to that is the answer is yes, but he can still be a part of entertaining fights. Even against Michael Chandler, he dropped Michael Chandler and he was looking fantastic until he got front kicked in the face and sadly got flatlined. And that's another thing, coming into that fight, last time out against Michael Chandler, he got knocked unconscious. That is a tough thing to rebound from, to come back from, and still relatively quickly, and to take a switch of opponents 48 hours before the fight. 24 hours, pardon me, 24 hours, and say, yeah, let's do it. Let's throw down. I'll go up against Nate Diaz. Come on, both men deserve a tremendous amount of respect for that. Both veterans of the company. Surprised that fight was never made in the past. But Nate Diaz was the victor. He gets the job done. Always is a gangster inside the octagon, and his stock now is through the roof. But what is he going to do? What are his options? He talked about a few things on the post-fight interview. I thought he gave a great speech. I thought Joe Rogan handled the interview very, very well. He said he's talking about boxing, talking about jiu-jitsu. The reality is, Diaz is a global superstar, an absolute sensation, and he's a very skilled mixed martial artist. So he can compete in jiu-jitsu, he can compete in kickboxing, not wrestling.
Full-blown wrestling.
But maybe, you know, you might even see him doing bare-knuckle boxing. You never know. He's going to go wherever pays the most money. But the reality is, and I know a lot of people think I'm a company man. And I'm proud to be, I am a company man. I work for the UFC and they've been very good to me. And I'm very, very proud of that. And I'm happy to be a part of the organization. Diaz doesn't have a lot of opportunities to earn the kind of money that he is outside of the organization. Of course, the big one, the obvious one that people are all talking about is boxing Jake Paul, okay? That's a one-off event. And who knows, it's not guaranteed to do blockbuster numbers. It probably would. Diaz is a draw. Jake Paul is a draw. That fight would get a lot of buzz. But that would be one fight. I think Diaz now is 37 years old, so his window of opportunity is closing all the time. So what? Maybe one big fight with Jake Paul. There's not a lot of opportunity to earn blockbuster paydays, one after the other, like he does with the UFC. So I think he will go and have that fight with Jake Paul. You know, and who knows, maybe Jake Paul's not interested. I think he would be. He's 37. He's a welterweight. He's a smaller guy, you know, and he's not really a boxer. So there we go. It ticks all the boxes. So that fight will probably happen. He'll make some money. And then what? Bellator, ONE FC, bare knuckle boxing, his own promotion. I mean, of course, there's the third fight with Conor McGregor out there that everybody wants to see. And I'm sure that he's thinking real fights, that's his promotion, going up against McGregor Sports and Entertainment. Them two fight each other. That's a blockbuster fight. And then they get to split the pot 50-50. Of course, they make all the money. The problem is that Conor McGregor's under contract with the UFC. I don't know the status of his contract right now, but he's under contract, and they're probably going to offer him another sensational contract because Conor pulls in the biggest numbers than anyone. So what I'm saying is that fight probably won't materialise anytime soon, and we'll probably see Nate Diaz potentially re-sign with the UFC. You know, that would not surprise me. But still, there it is. UFC 279 went down. Nate Diaz got the job done. Respect to Nate. Good luck in whatever ventures you do, whatever fights you have. I hope it's full of success. And thank you for the memories and the wars and the fights that he put on, the attitude, the realness that he brought every single time. And Tony Ferguson, chin up, my friend. You're a warrior. Nothing but respect for you. And that's it. Hope you're well, guys. Subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't done so already. I'll talk to you soon.